Welcome back to my build video series for the Blade 700X, and we are now on the tail segment of the series, and here we're gonna discuss putting together the entire tail assembly from the front transmission area here all the way to the back of the tail case. Alright, so let's get started. And the first part that I would like to discuss is this metal rod here, where all the transmission gears, for the, where this gear and this gear from the auto rotation hub goes into. All right, so the way this is going to be oriented, the hole that's closer to the end right here, this gear goes in like this. Okay, so there's a hole also as well here on this gear. Not sure you can see it right there, and that you would line up to this hole. Okay, so let me try and see if I can get this in this take. Is to insert gear right there, and then from there you would be taking these pins and inserting them onto the hole. So plus be aware that there is a flat spot, and there it is. Let's see, there is a flat spot where the set screw will be going into this shaft. So after you get this thing inserted all the way, the set screw just goes in and rests on that flat spot right there. Okay, so let's see if I can get this in. Let me take a little bit of fidgeting. Okay, so it's in there now. The next step is to get the set screw and make sure you clean it and apply Loctite to it, and you basically insert it here. Okay, alright, so that's how that piece goes. So make sure you get the flat spot where the set screw will go in. Okay, excuse me. So the next piece is this, and it will be inserting, it will be going in like so. And the same thing, you will be putting in the pin and putting the set screw right there. All right, so I'll finish this up later. I just want to, just for demonstration and move things along, I'll go ahead and assume it's, I got everything together. So the next piece would be this, and so this is really quick. What I do first is, so the setup is going to be like this, right? So, and this piece is going to be in the center like a spacer. So what I like to do first is put just one right there. Close it up. Oops. Okay, so while it's closed up like that, you get the torque tube gear, and I basically use the case to hold it together, like so. So right there, and then the next step would be to insert this piece like so, and then install this in the back, the gear, the bearing. Close it up again, and then push this in. That's it. Okay, and then from there, assuming that, like I mentioned earlier, that I've installed everything and put Loctite, you just put on the bearings like so, and then it just goes right there. Okay, and close. And then from there on, you basically insert all these posts into there. Alright, so that's about it for this part of the tail, and we will continue. We are now back to put together the rear tail case, which is page 14 of the manual. And on page 14 it shows grab bags T1 and T2. So this is all the contents for T1 and T2, and couple things you would be attaching is this arm right here, and then this is pretty easy. So you basically just put it there, Loctite the bolts, these two bolts, and just put it on right there. Okay, so that's one of the things you gotta put in there. The second one is the gearbox, and looking at it like this, because that arm is right here, this would go like this, and then just like the other tail shaft that you worked on the front gearbox, there's a hole on the gear, and that would go into this part of the tail shaft. So you would just insert that this way, and then all the way in, and then put the pin through, and then put the set screw right here, just like you did earlier. Okay, it also comes with shims, so depending on what you feel like is best for your gear mesh, you can either put the shim in the back of here or in the front of here. Put together the rear tail case, attach this arm right here for the tail slider lever, 2 bolts, and then installed the gear with the shaft here, push through, install the pin, and remember there's a flat spot. Make sure the flat spot is facing that way, so when you put the set screw in, it hits the flat spot. Okay, so this tail case actually did require one of the shims, and like I mentioned, it came with 2. I used one of them, and I put it right back here, so it pretty much set the mesh absolutely perfect, you know, with that shim right back here. Okay, so just wanted to show you that. Okay, so another one tip while you're building this, what I did was I got the tail hub, installed it, you know, tighten it down just so I could hold it while I was tightening down on that set screw right here. Okay, so you can put this on just to help out, you know, tighten this down. So that's just the tip. Okay, and the only thing left, which I don't think is in the manual, don't remember seeing it, is this rubber O-ring. Okay, so this rubber O-ring goes right here, right there. Okay, so this O-ring does a couple things. One, it does keep that bearing nice and clean, keeps the dust. If you like to oil your tail shaft like I do, once every day before I fly, keeps the gunk out of the bearings right here. And also when you set your endpoints for your fly barless controller, it keeps it from bottoming out there in the bottom and just putting too much pitch on the actual tail grips right here. I mean the tail. Okay, so this is all set. Alright, so we have now opened up bags T3, and besides the hub, this is all the parts that comprise that bag. And so how I got it laid out here is the order it would go into the tail grips. Okay, so what I would say before you get started, go ahead and Loctite this ball and attach it to the tail grip right there on both sides. Okay, so the way it goes in is this washer first in, and then the bearing with the larger diameter hole, you know, and as I showed you earlier on the rotor head, that's how you check. This one has the larger hole. That goes first, followed by the actual thrust bearing itself, and then the thrust washer, or that has the smaller diameter hole, a small washer, a bearing, and then the washer for the tail blade, tail grip, basically tail grip bolts. Okay, so let's go do this. Just hopefully I can get it all in the camera. So this part, oh, let me get a piece. Let me just get a tool here to shove everything in. Okay. So this piece goes in. Okay, and then this thin bearing right here, the one with a fairly big size hole. Okay, that goes in. Okay, the washer groove facing out with a bigger diameter hole. Okay, the bearing, which I've already, by the way, applied silicone grease inside the channel, and I put that with the channel facing in. Oops, get that flipped over. Okay, we'll just upside down right now. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll guide it in. Like I said, channel side, in channel opening is facing inside, followed by the washer here. I mean the thrust guide, washer guide, with the groove facing the washer. We'll just guide it in. Okay, just push everything in. Okay, here it goes. Then this kind of a thicker, smaller washer. Okay. Now followed by this bearing. There you go. And everything just goes in so nice and smooth. Okay. And then the bolt and a washer, right? So let me just put this down and get some Loctite on this thing, and I want to make sure, let's make sure that, okay, just have the threads, spread it so we don't get Loctite on the bearing itself. Okay, and that just goes in like so. Okay, what I do is I insert right there, so I can give this, can tighten this down. Okay. All right. Now, once you get everything in, this this movement is there by design. All right. So I did see a lot of people on the forum asking why there's play on the grips. That is there by design, and from what I understand, an explanation by James Haley, the designer of this helicopter, is it enables the thrust bearings to actually do its work properly without there's no pressure from it being squeezed in. And he said this also helps prevent those weird vibrations sometimes people run into with the tail. And I'm telling you, after flying my first 700X, this is one of the smoothest tails you guys will probably ever build. Very well designed. So just to say it again, this movement is there by design. Alright? So this side's done. I'll put that ball right there, and I'll go ahead and finish the other grip and bolt the tail case and the sliders all together. So I've finished the other side of the tail assembly, and the only thing I've done so far here is insert the tail slider onto the shaft, install the hub, put the set screw in, clean the set screw, and put Loctite. Okay, so the only thing that I would say take note here is the way the slider attaches to the tail grips, and it is what we call leading edge control. Okay, so this is the side outside. This is where the right side of the helicopter is, and the tail will be rotating like this. As you can see, the slider or the ball links are connected on the leading edge of the tail blade, because it's rotating this way. The leading edge of the tail blade is this side. For this side, it's this side. So it's leading edge control. Okay. So the next step on here on the tail is to get the tail lever here installed. And what I've done so far, just to speed things up, is install the ball right here, and these pins. There's screws that have threads on the bottom, and the top has no threads on them. They're the ones that go between, the tail slider. Okay, so what I want to make sure, or at least let you guys know, is my habit is when I install something like a metal to plastic like this on such a critical tail, such a critical component of the helicopter, I want to make sure this ball holds, because this controls the tail. I always put CA on the threads before I screw it into plastic. Okay, so I've done it for this. I've done it for these two. Makes them just bite into that plastic nice and tight. Okay, the bearings just go in there. They just slide in. No big deal. And the only thing you're gonna do here is basically just slide this in like that, and then get the screws, the bolts, and it comes with these tiny washers, and I hope you could see it right there. And basically all right, there it goes, nice and smooth. See, just to show you where the pins go in. So they go into the tail slider right there. You can see everything's nice and smooth, and like I mentioned earlier, this movement of the grips going in and out is there by design. Okay, so this completes the rear tail box. Okay, so now we are on page 16 of the manual, and what we have here is the torque tube. Okay, and what I only done so far to speed things up is make the mark on the torque tube exactly where the manual wants the bearings positioned. One of them is from tip to the bearing, put it at 278 millimeters, and then the other side from the tip to the bearing is 300 millimeters. So yeah, so exactly how you heard it, it's not going to be even, and they do that for a purpose. Typically when you put the bearings evenly, there's a chance that it could create some sort of weird resonance when they're evenly placed on a torque tube. So they always put them uneven. Okay, so where the mark is, all I do is basically get some Loctite around the torque tube. You know, so really thin coat around the torque tube. Here, spread it nice and thin. Okay, and then the moment you slide it in, you just stop right on top of it, and it should, right there. In only a few seconds, it's already grabbing. Okay, but obviously let it fully cure. So let's do this side as well. Okay, and then just slide the bearing right on top of it. Okay, alright, so while we wait for that to cure, we're gonna go ahead and insert these pieces onto the boom, the rod guide, and let's see. The only thing I made sure when I did this was there is a side to them. I just made sure they're all going in on the same side. So 2 on the front. Okay, same side. 2 on the front, and then the metal horizontal fin, or in the where the boom supports clamp it to go in the back. And then one more here in the back. So I'll show you guys how this is. So it's hard, it doesn't fit the camera. So this is the back of the helicopter. You got one of the tail rod guides, the horizontal fin or boom support clamp, and then 2 of the tail rod guides a little bit on the front. We'll adjust those later. Okay. So now we go on to the tail rod, and the only thing you really need to do here is I would do is attach one end first, and you can do the measurements later when you're dialing your flybarless system in, but what I would just do is just get it started. Okay, and then from there on the other side I would start inserting these 3 rod guides like so. Okay, and then I would attach the other ball end on the other side of the rod, just so they don't come off anymore. Okay, so basically just the 3 in there, rod ends on both, and how this will work. Let me just grab the screws. Go. So the way this will work is you will be putting the rod, you see the rod guide has these this pattern like serrations, and that actually goes into the guide like here, and then when you put the screw in, it grabs onto it. Okay, so you'd be doing that on all 3 of the rod guides. You line it up, get in there, get in the grooves right there, and then put the screw in. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that for this, just to move things along, and I'll be back. Okay, so the only thing I've done to fast forward is I've inserted the tail case on the back, and the only thing to take a note on is the screws. Once you insert it, make sure you see there is a hole on the boom, and when you insert it, make sure you see that you are on that hole before you insert these button head screws. I've seen some people not really pay attention and start screwing this in without really clearing the hole on the boom, and end up creating a new hole, or basically putting a dent on the boom. So that's the only tip I have for this tail case. You just slide it in, make sure the hole's lined up, and put the set screws in, and put Loctite. Okay, so what we have right now is the whole tail assembly, like the whole tail right there, and we got our torque tube with the bearings already glued in. And so the only thing I'm going to do here is insert the torque tube inside, and I'm going to turn it a little bit as I go in, just to make sure I get into the groove here. Okay, so now you'll feel it once it catches. There you go. Okay, so if I turn the torque tube, see, and right now it's pushed all the way in. What I will do is just give it a little bit of a back, just so the torque tube is relaxed. It is pretty tight in there. Just a light pull. There you go. And yeah, make sure I didn't push that main gear out. The torque tube gear out. Perfect mesh. Okay. And on this side, there's a hole right there. Make sure that hole, you see that hole go through here. Okay. And I've already put the screws on here, but they're all loose right now, so don't tighten them yet, because if you tighten them down, you won't be able to slide it over the boom. So this just goes in like so, and you may have to spin the gears just to make sure that it goes right into the groove. There it goes. And then make sure the hole, like I mentioned there, goes through. Okay, right there. I can see the hole right through. Everything's working great. And the only thing we're going to do here is put this set screw right here. Holds the boom in. Okay, so you didn't really have to tighten that. All it does is make sure the boom keeps the boom from backing out, and then you can go ahead and tighten these bolts. And like anything, I like to do them alternating. Just spreads the load evenly. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, you will be moving this around later when everything's attached on the heli. This one, nothing's screwed in, because the next step for the tail is just basically attaching the boom, like so. And there's two different screws for this clamp. Okay, one is a longer screw, and then one's a kind of a shorter screw. So there's a big difference in the screw. Okay, because the reason is the longer screw is the one that goes all the way and basically closes the clamp. Okay, so find that side. This is that side. If you try to insert it on the other side, it won't go in. As you see right here. See, but on this side, that's where it's supposed to go. Okay, so before you do that, you need to put a boom support right through and get some Loctite on there. Okay, so insert. Actually, make sure there's good enough Loctite there. Okay, so these boom supports are notorious for loosening up, and if they do loosen up, pretty bad things can happen. So make sure there's ample Loctite there. Okay. And this actually, my mistake. You can't really tighten it down right now. You need the this boom clamp to be able to slide back and forth. Because when you mount the tail onto the heli, you'll be sliding this back and forth. So the other end of the boom mount, the boom support, mounts onto the frame. All right. So yeah, don't tighten this right now. Leave everything as it is, nice and loose. We'll put Loctite later when everything's lined up on the heli. Okay, so but I will go ahead and attach the other boom support. Like so. And then the horizontal fin. What I did here is to basically install this insert onto the frame. They are a press fit, kind of tight. Had to use some sort of plier to get them all to go into that hole, and that's where the screws for the boom support will go into. So you do that on both sides, and then this shaft actually has the threads for the bolts. So this just goes in the middle right there, and the boom supports will be clamping down here. Okay, so that's pretty much it on the frame. On the tail, I put in the ball on a ball link right here, and all it is this piece just slides in. I bolted the tail onto the helicopter, bolted it all nice and tight. Boom supports bolted in right here, and then clamps tightened down with plenty of Loctite, like I mentioned, and then installed the tail rod onto the tail servo, lined up the rod guides, and you can adjust the height of the little guides onto this clamping guide piece right here. When you loosen it, you can adjust it, make sure that the rod's nice and straight. And what I basically ended up with as a starting point for the length of the tail rod is 830 millimeters from the top of this ball to the other side top as well. 830 millimeters gave me a pretty close to the right length. So I'll put this at where it's supposed to be neutral, which is pointing straight up right there. And if you see the arm, let me see here. Oh, sorry. There, that's 90. So you see here in the arm, it's almost, this lever is almost perfectly in line also with the tail case. So that's usually a pretty good starting point to get your flybarless system tuned for the tail. So 830 millimeters was my tail rod length as a starting point. So you'd probably end up adjusting and making it longer, making it shorter here and there, but it should be pretty close. Okay. The only thing I would like to show here is options with regards to mounting the AR7200 or your flybarless controller. I have done it with on this tray here in the back. So there is a mounting point right here, and you'd put the AR7200 here or whatever flybarless controller you'd be using. And what ended up being my setup was the controller was there. I used a receiver pack, which I ended up bolting on inside the frame here, like so. Of course, strapped, and so that's how I hit it before. And then the battery tray I had to build per the manual, not like this. This is the shorter way to get the batteries in more. But if you watch my frame portion, frame segment, I show you how basically you make this tray go in and out. You can assemble where the battery's out more or in. So I had the battery out to counter the weight from the back of the receiver pack and the controller, and that was the way I had it on previous build. Now, just so people also see, you might want to make one of these. It's just a connector for if you're wanting to use a receiver pack, and it breaks out to 2 servo connectors that plugs into your AR7200. Okay, so that's what I used. Now, the other setup I've done is I had the controller at the front, like so, and basically when the tray for the ESC bolts in the front, ESC is right here, right? The motor, the wires for the motor just goes over here, plugs in here, so it's a pretty clean setup. Controller right down in the front, ESC, and then the battery tray was configured like this, so the batteries are in more to compensate for the additional weight in the front. And with that setup, I ended up putting the receiver pack right here outside the frame, strapped here outside the frame, and I got perfect CG. And I like that setup better. That's just my preference, because the batteries are pretty much all inside the frame. So in a crash, you get pretty good protection with that setup, having everything in the front and then batteries slid all the way to the back. Okay? So that's about it. I think this is pretty much the wrap up of the build video series for the Blade 700X. And like I normally do with my other build videos, I do not go through the AR7200 setup step by step. There are plenty of videos out on YouTube that are so well made. I recommend you go search them and just follow the step by step setup of the AR7200, because every setup could vary depending on how the servos are plugged in. That's why I don't want to go and discuss the setup routines for that, because everybody's could be a little different. So, but anyways, for the main frame, we are complete. For this one, all I have to do is install the AR7200, my speed control, this piece, and blades, tail blades, and I'm good to go.